Feral by Night is a storytelling series of eerie tales, strange houses, hauntings, weird things that happen on lonely roads, and all the things that go bump in the night. I'm Papa G, and this is Feral by Night. So turn the lights down and settle in. Some stories are better heard after dark. The dirt was waiting in front of the pantry door again. Nadine stopped in the kitchen entrance with her coat still on and her keys in her hand. She had swept that floor before she left. She remembered doing it because she had been angry the whole time, pushing the broom hard under the table, along the baseboards, and into the corners her mother used to check with one finger. Now a thin line of dark grit stretched out from the pantry door. It hadn't scattered like normal dust. It looked placed. Nadine stood there for a long moment before she turned on the overhead light. The old fixture buzzed, then filled the kitchen with a dull yellow glow. The dirt didn't look any better in the light. It looked damp, almost black, though the floor around it was dry. Her mother had been gone for 17 days. The house still smelled like coffee, lavender soap, vinegar, and old wood. Nadine had been coming by after work to box things up before the realtor started showing it. She had already cleared the hall closet, the linen cabinet, and most of the bedroom drawers. The kitchen was harder. Her mother was superstitious, and most of her superstitions lived in the kitchen. Salt stayed near the stove. The back door was locked before sunset. Shoes were never left upside down. And once daylight was gone, the broom stayed in the pantry. There should be no sweeping done after dark. Nadine had heard that rule her whole life. If sugar spilled after supper, it stayed. If crumbs fell under the table, they waited until morning. If a glass broke at night, her mother picked up the pieces by hand and left the broom alone. When Nadine was younger, she asked what would happen if someone swept after sunset. Her mother always gave the same answer. The broom didn't just clear a floor. At night, it cleared a path. Nadine had rolled her eyes at that for years. Then the funeral came, and the house came to her. And all those old rules were still sitting in the rooms like they belonged there. The first time she swept after dark, she did it because she was tired of feeling watched by a dead woman's habits. The kitchen floor was muddy from people coming in and out after the funeral. The realtor was due the next morning. The broom stood bristles up in the pantry, right where her mother had always kept it. Nadine took it out and swept the whole kitchen. Nothing happened, so she dumped the dirt into a trash bag, tied it shut, and left. The next evening, the dirt was back in front of the pantry. She swept it again harder than before, and made herself look inside the pantry afterward. The shelves were crowded with jars, paper bags, old cake pans, and 3 more unopened boxes of salt. Nothing had fallen, nothing had spilled. The floor under the lowest shelf was clean. The following morning, a fresh line of grit lay at the foot of the basement door, and that was when she started getting nervous. The basement door was across the hall from the kitchen, latched with an old hook. Nadine hadn't opened it since the funeral. Her mother had used the basement for canned jars, Christmas boxes, and things she didn't want anyone touching. Even in daylight, it had a wet, closed-up smell that came through the cracks around the door. Nadine swept the dirt away before the realtor arrived. She used a damp paper towel afterward, pressing hard until the linoleum shone, but the black grit left a faint streak that wouldn't lift. By sunset, it had returned farther into the hall. This time, it carried small gray clumps of hair. Nadine crouched and stared at them without touching them. The hair looked old, but it wasn't the fine white hair her mother left in brushes and sink drains. This was darker, coarser, like it had come from something that had been buried. She swept it up because leaving it there felt worse. After that, she tried not to look toward the pantry unless she had to. She packed dishes from the upper cabinets, wrapped them in newspaper, and kept telling herself that damp houses made messes. Old houses shifted. Mice dragged strange things through walls. Every explanation sounded thin once she said it in her head, but she held on to each one until the sun went down, and the kitchen began to feel occupied. That night, sometime after 2, Nadine woke in her mother's bed to the sound of bristles moving downstairs. She hadn't meant to sleep in that room. She had gone in after work to sort clothes and lay down for a minute, but now the house was dark except for the weak blue numbers on the dresser clock. The sound came in slow strokes, each scrape followed by a long pause, then another scrape that seemed to move from the kitchen into the hall. When it stopped at the bottom of the stairs, Nadine sat up with the blanket pulled to her chest. One stair creaked, then another. In the morning, the broom was leaning against the banister. A dark trail crossed the kitchen, ran through the hall, and ended on the first 3 steps. Pressed into the dirt were the marks of bare toes, long and narrow, pointing upward. Nadine left the house before breakfast and didn't come back until noon. Daylight made her braver, but only barely. She carried the broom straight outside and threw it into the burn barrel behind the shed. It took several matches to get it lit. The straw smoked, curled, and blackened. The handle split with a sharp crack. Nadine stood there until all that remained was ash, bent wire, and a short piece of charred wood. Before dark, she poured salt across the pantry door, the basement door, and the back threshold. She felt foolish doing it, but she still did it. Her mother had kept boxes of salt under the sink, and Nadine used every one of them. Then she left, and she made it to the porch before she heard the dustpan fall inside. The sound was flat and loud. Nadine froze with one hand on the railing, and after a few seconds, another sound followed from the kitchen, a soft scrape across the floor. She turned around slowly and looked through the small window in the back door. The kitchen light was still on. The dustpan lay in the center of the floor, and the salt line in front of the pantry had turned black. A thin seam of dirt pushed beneath the pantry door, grain by grain. It spread across the linoleum in a slow, steady line, carrying flecks of ash from the burn barrel. Nadine stepped back from the door. The pantry knob turned, and the door opened just wide enough for the burned broom to slide out. Most of the bristles were gone. The handle was split down the center. It dragged itself forward in short, careful strokes, pushing dirt ahead of it instead of away. Wherever the dirt moved, the floor darkened. Nadine ran to her car, but the engine wouldn't start. The key turned, the dash lights came on, and the engine clicked once before it went quiet. From inside the house came 3 hard knocks. They didn't come from the back door. They came from the basement door. Nadine should have run down the road and left every box, every paper, every piece of furniture behind. Instead, she went back inside for her purse and phone. The moment she crossed the kitchen threshold, the back door shut behind her. The lock clicked. Nadine grabbed the knob and twisted hard. It didn't move. She ran to the front door. That lock turned in her hand, but the door stayed sealed in the frame. She tried the windows next. Everyone held tight. Behind her, the broom scraped through the kitchen. It swept the dirt into a line, and the line pointed toward the basement door. The hook latch lifted by itself. Nadine backed into the hallway wall as the basement door opened inward. The smell came out first. Wet soil, old leaves, stale air, and something sour underneath it. Then dirt began spilling up the stairs. It wasn't falling down from above. It was pushing upward from the basement in heavy clumps, carrying ash, hair, and small white pieces that clicked against the floorboards. One rolled to Nadine's foot. It was an adult tooth. Another followed, and then a key, her mother's kitchen key. The broom kept scraping. It pushed the dirt into a path that ran from the basement stairs to the pantry, then from the pantry to the place where Nadine stood. She ran upstairs and slammed herself into her mother's bedroom. She shoved the dresser against the door and backed toward the bed. The room was cold. The covers had been pulled back. On the pillow sat a neat mound of black dirt, shaped like someone had emptied a dustpan there. Resting on top of it was the piece of charred broom handle from the burn barrel. The bedroom door creaked against the dresser. A line of dirt appeared under it. Then the broom began sweeping from the hallway side, moving with slow patience, making a path straight to the bed. The next afternoon, the realtor found the front door unlocked. The house was quiet and bright. The kitchen floor was spotless. The pantry stood open. The basement door was shut and latched from the outside. Nadine's purse sat on the kitchen table. Beside it was the dustpan. Inside was a small pile of black dirt, one adult tooth, and Nadine's car key. And across the clean kitchen floor, fresh broom marks led from the pantry to the basement door, where two long barefoot prints stood in the dust, facing outwards. Feral by Night is the sister podcast to The Feral Folklorist. You can find information on both podcasts on feralfolklorist.com. And if you'd like to see the animated video versions of these stories, consider becoming a patron on my Patreon at patreon.com/PapaG. And if you're ever in the market for metaphysical supplies, our store, Aromagees Botanica, has been weaving magic for over 25 years. That's over at aromagees.com.